All right, hello everyone. Welcome to our lesson for this week. We're going to talk about the War Homefront. So, what is going on for civilians during World War One? Okay, our objectives and standards to summarize how the nations of the world engaged in total war, and to explain the role of women in the war. And take a look at the standards too, please. We have three words for our vocab preview: total war, rationing, and propaganda. You may have seen some of these words before, so maybe you recognize some of them, but these are the three words we're going to talk about for this lesson. Okay, so I want you to think about this, and hopefully you've either answered this or you can stop the video here and go back to it. But what I'd like you to do is answer this question: how can citizens of a nation support a war effort? Besides enlisting for the military, what are some different ways that people can help support a country during a war? And then our essential question: how did people around the world become involved in the war effort? Okay, so everyone in the fight. So the war affected every person around the world. Millions had joined the military, and many came home wounded, or sadly, they came home wounded, like I said, or many did not come home at all. Civilians are also going to become involved in the fighting and the war effort in different ways as well. So World War One would soon become a total war, and what a total war is when countries devote all their resources to the struggle. So, for example, countries changed their economies to be focused on more production, as factories were told how much to produce, and building tanks and things like that. And some factories were even converted into munition productions, like bullets and bombs and things like that. And every person in every country was pretty much put to work, excuse me, for the war effort. Okay, so for this reason, unemployment is beginning to drop. So demand for goods was rising as well. Now the supply for certain items was so short that the government had to put in place rationing. Now, rationing is restricting citizens to buy a small amount of an item so the rest could be used for the war effort. So, for example, like we put down here, this covered a wide range of items from shoes to butter to anything, oil, anything that could be used for the war effort or to support um, soldiers fighting around the world, governments put in place. So, again, this is known as rationing. Governments also limited anti-war activities, excuse me, sometimes with force. Um, so, speaking out against the war or publicizing anything that was against the war, a lot of times governments are going to kind of, limit those types of activities because they don't want any type of that type of activity hindering the war effort. They also censored news about the war. So if a battle didn't go well, or maybe a battle took longer than expected, that type of news was censored, or maybe was kind of fibbed a little bit, or adjusted a little bit to fit these different countries' plans. That way, they could still continue to build support for the war. Because if you think about, if your citizens of your country know that you're losing a war, how likely are you going to be to continue to support that war? So that's why governments are kind of fibbing a little bit. Governments also used propaganda. Now, propaganda, you may have heard this word before, is one-sided information with the goal of persuading a person to an idea or position to build support for the war in their nations. So you'll see on the questions here, there's some examples of propaganda during World War One. So the goal was to build support for the war effort. So you might show the enemy, burning a village with women and children in it, for example. And again, there's different violent and non-violent images, but they didn't always have to be that violent. But there's different examples of showing the enemy is with sharp teeth or fangs or something like that, to try and scare people into the fact that the Germans are evil, or the French are evil, or the Russians are evil, or whatever. And even the Americans use propaganda as well. And we still see this today around the world. Sometimes with different propaganda being used. So this is a technique and tactic that is still used today. Okay, so governments also turned to women to help out with the war effort. Women went to work in factories and offices and shops while men were off fighting the war. And they also helped gather supplies and food for soldiers uh, as well. They, collection drives and things like this, they helped do that too. And still more women even went to war themselves and went and worked as nurses, so caring for the wounded and things like that. So many of them go overseas and help fight overseas with fighting against disease and things like that, helping take care of these soldiers as well. Okay, so we'll wrap it up here. So the war home front. So remember that governments sought to build support for the war effort through rationing and propaganda. And women joined the war effort as well through many different roles, working in factories, going to the eastern and western fronts as nurses and helping care for the wounded. So remember that it wasn't just the soldiers fighting overseas. People at home were fighting in their own countries as well and volunteering and doing what they could to support the war effort. Okay. All right, guys, that's all I have. So again, please make sure you do the think about this question and answer the other questions, and I'll see and talk to you later.